Hey, Gloria. Thanks for joining me today. Really excited to talk about you and your business. So, thanks for taking the time to chat
Hi there.
today and would love to have you kind of walk us through a little bit about your background and how you got into business.
Sure. Well, it's actually kind of refreshing for me to be talking about what I'm doing as a business because I am really trying to make sure that people understand that when you are running a nonprofit organization, you have to have all of the skills that you have to have if you're running any size business, that you have fewer resources and more scrutiny over you. And
Yeah.
so I have actually been in the either education or nonprofit world my entire career. I had 30 years with Planned Parenthood. I was the CEO of two affiliates, a very small one that I had an opportunity to grow into a medium size that I had a chance to grow into one of the largest in the country. Thought I was going to semi-retire and write some books, and I started writing books. One of the books, which is called No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power, ended up turning into the organization that I co-founded and am now CEO of, which is called Take the Lead. Our URL is Take the Lead Women, if people would like to search for it. And our mission is gender parity in leadership across every single sector. And we know, for example, that businesses with more women in their leadership are actually more profitable. So there's a business reason, there's a business case as well as a justice case for making sure that there's equality for between women and men and opportunity in terms of in the business world. So that is what we're doing now based on this book that I wrote, No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power. I created a curriculum, and that curriculum is now available for individuals or for businesses to license. And it's been proven to accelerate women in leadership quite substantially.
So, that's very interesting and compelling. Can you talk about how writing the book you know, transition into the business? I get it. Like people probably, really like the book and then you started your coaching and your curriculum around that. But like, was that something you thought you were going to do before you wrote the book? Just tell us a little bit about how that developed. That's super interesting.
Well, that's such a good question because no, my intention was simply to write this book. And to me, I was writing a social commentary book. I expected it to be on the shelf. I expected to be able to do some media interviews. I expected to be able to do some public speaking using the topics of the book. But it was never my intention to start an organization. But what happened was, as people began to read the book, they recognized that it was, in fact, a leadership book and that I had written two things that were very relevant to leadership and things that women were struggling with. So the first part of it is the transformation of how we think about power. And your listeners or watchers might have read recently about the latest McKinsey Lean In study that says women have less ambition than men. And that's why we are not in the leadership positions as in the same numbers as men. Well, interestingly enough, when I wrote No Excuses 15 years ago, or I was researching it 15 years ago, the research then said women had less ambition than men. And I thought, no, that's not it. That's not it. And this recent McKinsey study does show that women start out in the workforce with even a little more ambition than men, but it kind of gets beaten out of them after a while because they're in a culture they didn't create. They're in a structure they didn't create, and it doesn't feel right, and it doesn't allow for caregiving, for example, the fact that women still bear more of the brunt of caregiving. So the transition was that as I began to realize all these things, and people asked me to teach workshops using the transformation of power and the 9 leadership power tools in the book, well, I guess you could say I got hooked. I loved it. I was having so much fun. And I started out in life as a teacher and I'm ending up in life as a teacher again. And so that's really how it happened. It was a transition that took place over a few years.
Interesting. I have a bunch of questions, and I want to start off with this one. You mentioned that women in leadership is actually more profitable for companies, and I'm just curious
Mhm.
to like have you explain the data and stuff behind that because when you have data and you say like this data shows that you're going to be more profitable, it's obviously a much more compelling, argument to do
Right.
anything. So yeah, I would love to kind of let you peel the onion on that for us.
Absolutely. Pretty much every major consulting group like McKinsey, Bain, you name it, they have all done separate studies. In addition to that, foundations like the Pew Foundation, nonprofit organizations, academic institutions have all run these numbers, and they come up with the same answer. And may come up with varying bottom lines, but the ROI will be anywhere from 5 to 15% higher. The return on equity will also be higher. I have a few theories about why it is, by the way, which I
I'd
will
love for you to share
love
those.
to
That was gonna
share.
be my next
Yeah, I'd
question, yeah.
love to share that with you because I truly think, it's not that women are better than men. Nobody's better than anybody. Everybody's born with this pretty much the same, range of intelligence and capability and all that. But when you are the group that has not been in power, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, of either gender, you have to learn to read the room in a way that white males don't need to do. And, because white men have created the company structures that we have, and they are created basically for those men who had pretty much women or other people taking care of their lives, the rest of their lives. And their structures are, they fit the people who created them. And that's not a negative thing. I mean, that's what happens when you get to create the structure. But I really think that the key is that when you have not been the group in power, you have to have more empathy. You have to have more of an ability to figure out what's going on behind the words people are saying. What's really happening in this room? And that is a tremendous asset. In fact, it is now a superpower that women have, that ability. And it's culturally learned because we have been acculturated to be the support system. We've been acculturated to be to be able to be empathetic and also to be more collaborative, by the way. And I think that's another thing because today's economy, today's work, things are changing so fast that the old command and control doesn't work the way it used to. You have to have a structure that is in a process that's more open, more collaborative, more transparent. Employees, particularly the youngest and the younger generations, they want a lot more transparency and they want to feel that they can trust the people. They don't just take orders. They
Mhm.
don't, they don't just say, yes, sir. They want to know why. And the trust factor is a huge thing.
Very interesting. I guess when you talk to women who are pursuing like a career or pursuing growth, like what are some of the pieces of advice that you give them? I'm thinking from like everything that you just said. I think obviously I'm married. I have a beautiful wife, and I run like a lot of the most probably all my decisions by her because she picks up on things that I don't, and I'm wondering if that's like also part of it. But then on the same time, like she has a career for herself. So like, what type of advice would you give somebody like my wife on climbing her career ladder?
Absolutely. That's where the 9 leadership power tools come in because they are very actionable, practical, specific ways that you can thrive in the world as it is while you are changing it if you want to change some aspects of it. So, what I start with is knowing your history, know your value. Like, what did you learn from your family? What are your values? What's your value system? What's important to you? You got to get clarity about what's important to you. Secondly, is the second leadership power tool is define your own terms first before someone else defines you. And again, there is some acculturation that happens with women where if you're the support system, you're not necessarily defining your terms. So I really work with women on their own intentionality. This is something I literally had to learn on the job. I mean, don't think I knew this. Believe me, I was a teen mom. I had 3 kids by the time I was 20. And then I woke up. And then I started figuring these things out. And then I started working. And I had to learn every single bit of this on the job. So this is not hardwired. I'm no smarter than anybody else. But these are the things that I learned on the job. And so the second power tool, define your own terms, is critically important because whoever sets the agenda for a meeting, for example, is likely to get what they want. And if you walk into a meeting and you don't know what your agenda is, you're likely to leave it without accomplishing what you thought you wanted to accomplish. The third one is use what you've got. Use what you've got. Because very often, women in particular think they don't have all the skills or all the knowledge they need. Again, the data shows that if there's a position opening and a man has maybe 2 or 3 of the 10 skills, he'll apply. If a woman doesn't have nine or 10 of the 10 skills, she will not apply. And I find that in my courses, when I'm teaching these courses, in my mind, I feel like my sweet spot is that mid-career woman who's trying to determine her next step. What happens is I end up attracting women who are CEOs, who are corporate counsel, who are building their own businesses. And, they have PhDs. And I'm like, what? You people should be teaching this course. But women always feel like they need to know more and they need to be able to do every single thing. So I teach them, no, identify what skills you have. Identify what you bring to the table. Is it your knowledge? Is it your connections? Is it your skills? And just build on that, because you don't have to be able to do everything. You need to be able to do what you do and be you. So those are the first three of the leadership tools. I won't go into all of them, but there are basically three buckets. Those three are what I call the things that help you know yourself. So you need to know yourself first, the self-definitional tools. The second group are the counterintuitive tools, where I teach women how to deal with controversy, conflict, chaos, and so forth. And the third are the change leadership tools, in which a leader needs to be willing to be the person who drives the change, not just responds to it.
Yeah, that's really insightful. I think I have heard that stat before, that women are less likely to apply unless they have all the skills, and then men will apply with, much less the skills. I've heard that somewhere before, so that must be some, study or
Yeah, I didn't
something.
make it up. It's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, Gloria, tell us a little bit about, like, functionally how your business runs. I know you're speaking, I know you're coaching, you have a program. Like, what's that like day to day running that business, and like, what are some of the tools and systems you use to keep everything moving?
Mhm. People are always asking me what my schedule is so that we can plug in a regular meeting, and I'm like, I don't have any 2 days that are alike. They're all different, and I am doing my best to organize that differently, but it's really so much of what I do is building relationships with people, and that requires a very flexible schedule. I would say that I spend a fourth of my time. This time of the year, it's more like three-fourths of my time raising money, because no money, no mission, right? You can't do your job if you don't have the money for it. So we are funded both with philanthropic funds and with revenues generated from our services, fees for service. So we basically have two different streams of revenue. And the reason for that is that as a nonprofit organization, or social profit organization, as one of my board members says we should actually call ourselves, we want to make sure that we can provide our services to those really brilliant women out there who may not be able to afford the kind of quality of training that we do. And right now, there are hundreds of thousands of women who are out of work because of government cuts and cuts in funding to various and sundry programs that they've been working in. So we're actually raising money this year to make sure we can provide scholarships for our services to those women. So right now, it is very focused on fundraising to the end of the year so that we can start next year strong. The rest of my time, and most of the time, I'm spending a half to three-fourths of my time either teaching courses or planning those revenue-generating programs that we provide, which are either online courses, in-person workshops, and courses of various kinds, which I'll describe. And we also do one big conference a year called the Power Up Conference, which we do on Women's Equality Day, August 26th. So I'm saying that so people will put that on their calendar right now. And we have a concert and a conference, and we're having it in Washington, D.C. for the third year this year. So my time is really is devoted like that. What's interesting to me, having run large organizations, is that running a small startup requires me to be able to do some of almost everything. So too much of my time is spent doing my own social media, doing administrative things that I would like to, as we grow, my goal is to grow so that I can focus on the relationship building, the partnerships, the fundraising, the public speaking, those things that I really do best, and frankly, that I'm happier doing. So our courses include the online self-directed course, the 9 Leadership Power Tools. There's a version for people who are in organizations and a version for women who are entrepreneurs. So you can take your pick. You can do it on your own, or you can also supplement it with coaching from one of our leadership ambassadors. I will tell you, I'm not a very good coach because what I'm very good at is figuring out what your problem is and telling you what to do about it. And that's not what a coach does. So I don't do coaching, but I do training, and I love doing training. And we have a very immersive version of it called 50 Women Can Change the World, which we do by industry. So we have done this program for everything from media and entertainment to journalism to entrepreneurs to nonprofits, healthcare, across the board. Our goal next year is to do these 50 Women Can Change the World programs for women in AI, because AI is taking such a
Yeah.
huge role in businesses. And if we don't have more women in the leadership, what is happening already is that AI gets trained in the same biased culture as our overall culture. So what we need is to have more women in the leadership so that we are training AI properly, and everybody gets a fair shot.
Yeah, I question on that. So when you say women in the leadership, is that like leadership of like the large language models and the AI companies just generally, or just are you talking about like companies that are specifically using a certain type of AI? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm talking about companies that are building AIs of various kinds in particular. But
Mhm.
what we're also doing is realizing that one of the ways for women to solve for the pressures they sometimes feel in terms of work and life balance, we can help them solve with the use of AI. So we're working on it from various different directions. Main motivating factor is to have more women setting the policy and design of AI so that they are less biased.
Interesting, interesting. And then how to use it to kind of elevate themselves. That's great. So another question for you, you have all these things happening. What technology are you or tools are you using to run this? I mean, because you're doing so many different things. How do you keep organized? You have the coaching program, like what's that on? Like tell us a little bit tactically about that, or any tips and
Oh my
tricks for
gosh.
somebody who might want to do something similar. Yeah.
I wish I could tell you that I have this great system and I'm using all these technologies, but the truth of it is too much of it is in my own head. And I think many business owners have that problem, especially entrepreneurs have that problem as startups. It's there's no question that we try to do too many things. And since I did start with a very small organization and then worked my way up into a very large organization, I have had experience doing almost everything. But the world is changing so much right now. So our focus, for example, on social media did not exist 20 years ago. Our focus on being able to use the digital technologies did not exist. I don't know exactly how to answer the question of what technologies we use, but we use Kajabi for our course platform. And also, we are building out our community on Kajabi now. We were using other media like Facebook, and we're moving it to Kajabi because it's more private and it's more secure and people are more comfortable with that. For our newsletter or CRM right now, we're using Active Campaign, but we're also looking at some other newer, again, more AI driven products that are out there. And we may be changing that. We have Salesforce, which I think we're not using to its full capability because we have the nonprofit free version of it and we're looking at that. Um, where I am looking to streamline our accounting and bookkeeping with the use of more technologies and less human capital to do it. There's so much right now that you can't follow every shiny object, but it is
Yeah.
tempting because there are so many new ways that people can do things right now.
Yeah, I think you did. I mean, that's you have a great explanation of, what you're using and it sounds like it's working well, so that's great. Gloria, I want to ask you, obviously AI is a major trend, but you focus on, getting women into leadership roles. So I'm wondering, are there any trends that you're seeing? Are you seeing like a positive trend in your mission or otherwise like what's that look like?
When we first started out, we put a stake in the ground and we said we're going to reach parity in leadership, gender parity in leadership by 2025. Well, it's 2025. We did increase from 18% of the top leadership positions to almost 30%. And 30% seems to be the tipping point where things move faster. But things happen, right? Disruptions happen. We couldn't have predicted the pandemic, for example, which threw a lot of women out of the workforce. And now we're dealing with the consequences of many women preferring to work from home and finding that that sometimes puts them at a disadvantage in terms of the relationships that they might have built with their senior leadership. So that's a whole thing to worry about. Frankly, is a lot of pushback in general. About women's equality in general. And I don't want to preface this by saying I hate to be political because honestly, everything in life is political one way or the other. But the truth is that we have to refight a lot of battles that we have fought in the past. And even things like access to health care in general, the debate that's going on right now in Congress, that affects women hugely, hugely. And children, hugely, families, whole families. So that's, there are disruptions that are occurring right now in society that are not favorable toward women's continued advancement, precisely because no matter what we have done, women are still doing more than 60% of the caregiving and more than 60% of the dealing with the household issues. So if there's an economic downturn, it's going to be the women who have to figure out how to buy groceries with less money, just for one example. That in turn affects it might, if you think about it, maybe it will affect their desire to reach higher levels of positions with higher pay. I would hope that. But it also may have the opposite effect of making them bail out of the workforce because childcare is so expensive. They have to deal with a lot of different issues. So we are in a time of great chaos right now. And it really is, I would like to say that there are lots of structural changes that are needed. But because women have the most at stake in making those structural changes, we have to own responsibility to do a lot of it, to really advocate for a lot of it ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. You typically think of the mother who is, making sure the family is, squared away and whatnot. So I guess my question to you is if you could wave a magic wand to, fix one thing or take advantage of one opportunity, like what would that be, in this scenario to rectify this?
In the current world, probably the most effective thing that could happen, these are two things, but they're intimately tied together. One would be for men to feel and act more as equal partners in caregiving and child raising in particular. And so to not think of it as helping, to think of it as being an equal partner. And related to that would be greater availability of affordable childcare so that families, because the typical family these days is a two-earner family. And for people to be able to have the family, the children that they would like to have, they need to have a network of support to be able to raise those children. And childcare is a huge issue right now. And I think that might be the magic wand would be men playing an equal role and having the childcare as supports. There are some wonderful men out there who are trying to solve these problems as well. And they're doing things like encouraging male leaders to mentor women more. And that's important too. But I think given that there are so many women now who are in leadership positions, that the most important thing would be to just make it possible to be able to work.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of ties into, a lot of things going on right now. I guess for you, Gloria, and your mission, like where do you want to see yourself in the next 6 to 12 months? Like what's success for you?
A success for us would be to obtain some very large grants that we're applying for that would enable us to literally revolutionize the whole field of women in artificial intelligence and technology in general. That is our big dream for this next year. And in doing so, to raise enough funds to enable us to build a sustainable organization that doesn't require me to know how to do every little thing because, I am not immortal. It would be nice to think I might be, but I am not immortal either. And I do have other things, family issues that I want to be able to deal with and enjoy in my life. So I want to make this a strong, sustainable organization. And I really believe that technology in general and AI in particular right now is the single most important initiative that we can take on in the next year.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I wish you the best of luck, Gloria. People who are interested in this and people interested in hearing about your program or maybe looking for your book or just hearing more about you, like what are the best ways for those folks to find you and reach out to you?
I am on most social media platforms as my own name at Gloria Feldt. You just have to remember it's Feldt. Take the Lead is our website is taketheleadwomen.com. And that's where you can find our courses. You can find out if you're such a mind that you'd like to financially support this endeavor. You can see where to donate. And you can also find a lot of free materials. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter, which is and we have a leadership blog that is rated number 3 among women's business blogs in the world. So we have lots of great free information for people, and I encourage people to sign up for that newsletter. All of that can be found at our website, taketheleadwomen.com. And on social media, Take the Lead is either Take Lead Women or Take the Lead Women, depending upon how many characters the platform gives us.
Amazing. Gloria, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Wish you the best of luck on your mission and your business endeavors.
My pleasure. Thank you, Eamon.